Welcome back to TYT's The Conversation. And now I have for you a candidate for mayor of Vernon, Connecticut, Mr. Jesse Schoolnik. Thanks for joining us, Jesse.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Jesse. So we know that the mayor who's been there has kind of already been a long-term position and fixture in the community. So what led you to run?
Well, I feel very strongly that you can't complain about how things are going if you're not going to be willing to go out there and make a difference yourself. And when they approached me about running, I just had to say yes. We're facing a problem here in Vernon that we're really seeing throughout the country, and that's attack on our voting rights. Last year, in the middle of the pandemic, the Secretary of State here in Connecticut gave all 169 towns in Connecticut a special mailbox that they could use for absentee ballots. And only one mayor out of those 169 decided they didn't want it. And can you guess who it was? It was here in Vernon. They had their own mailbox. It wasn't ADA compliant. It wasn't out there 24 hours a day. And it just was a complete mess. And after we protested and we fought to get it put in, it was put in and it worked phenomenally. And they're gonna use it again this year. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of some of the issues we're facing here in Vernon.
Wow, that is a significant one, especially as we see voting rights being challenged really across the United States here. And just the fact that, hey, you need a voting box that is ADA compliant and accessible to all, that would seem to kind of just be a given. But I guess it sounds like the incumbent there really didn't necessarily agree and you had to fight for it. So in terms of now we know what led you to fight so that you're running, what do you plan to do or what is your goal when it comes to making change there in Vernon, Connecticut?
Well, I look at Vernon and I think there's so much opportunity here. I want to focus on economic development. Right now, when we go out to eat on the weekend, there's so many other towns around us that have more unique restaurants or bars or breweries, places to go. There's places for them to be put in here in Vernon. I think we just have to have the right person in charge to attract those businesses to town. I want to lower the mill rate here in town, which has to do with our taxes. It's the highest in the immediate area. The current mayor, who by the way is also our state senator, so he has two jobs. He's elected to and doing neither of them well, in my opinion. He's focusing on basically treading water. He always says, things aren't getting worse, but I think things can get better. It's not one or the other. You can focus on things not getting worse and fight for them to get better. As I mentioned earlier, I want to fight for our right to vote, and I want to work on bipartisanship. I used to work in Washington D.C. I was a staffer for the Senate Finance Committee, and I was a nonpartisan staffer, so I worked with Republicans and Democrats, and I saw that it can happen here in Connecticut. We always talk about the Red Sox and Yankees, and watched the game last night. And I think some people up here want to act like we're the Red Sox and Yankees fighting each other, but we're not the Red Sox and Yankees. We're one team, and we're on the same team, and we need to work together because nothing gets done unless we're working together. And it's just something that's been missing from our town for at least the last decade, if not longer.
Yes, that sense of collaboration is so incredibly important when you're representing people. And it sounds like, as you mentioned, the current mayor having kind of those dual roles, it seemed to be a little bit somewhat conflicting when it comes to spending your time, but I will leave that to that individual to kind of determine what works best for them. But in terms of Vernon and also meeting people's needs, what do you see that people would really like change in addition to these economic changes?
I think people just want to feel good about how things are going in town. It's been a tough year for everybody in the country. And there are parts of Vernon, it's oftentimes a tale of two towns. There's Vernon and Rockville as a subsection there. And I think folks in Rockville sometimes feel a little left behind. They don't necessarily have a voting place that's within walking distance. They don't have a grocery store. The hospital may be shutting down. And I think we need to look at this town and realize that the needs of everybody in town are important, not just people in certain areas. I live in Vernon, but I spend a lot of time in Rockville. I know a lot of people who live there. And I think we need to, again, work together to get everybody's needs met, which is something that's just not happening right now. And it might be because the current mayor, and I mentioned was also our state senator, he represents 13 towns as state senator. So oftentimes he's focusing on the needs of other towns and leaving Vernon behind, and then coming back to Vernon and saying, why isn't Hartford doing this for our town? He seems to forget sometimes that he is Hartford, that he's there all the time. And Connecticut's a blue state. Vernon is a purple town. And he is a Trump Republican. Oftentimes, he doesn't just vote in the minority in the Senate. He votes in the minority of his own party. When you're one of two Republicans voting against a bill that everybody else is voting for, something is wrong, especially when those bills directly impact Connecticut and Vernon.
Wow, that is so incredibly important that you are standing up and using your voice. And that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to speak with you, not only to uplift the issues in Vernon, but also because you serve as an example of someone who saw an issue and saw the opportunity to make change, and now who is out here running for office now as candidate for mayor of Vernon, Connecticut. And that is so incredibly inspiring, since a lot of us spent our time during 2020 pushing for change. And so I'd love to hear what kind of advice you have for people out there who see issues and want to step into the political arena and actually run for office.
I would tell them, don't be afraid of doing it. Someone has to do it. And if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would be running for mayor, I would have laughed and said, no way. But since then, I become vice chair of the town Democrats. I'm a charter member of the Lions Club. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm president of my housing association, because people need to stand up and do this. And that person can be you. If you're looking at what's going on in this world and wanting to make it better, look in the mirror and realize you're the person that can make that difference and can make that change. It sounds a little cliche, but one person can make a difference, and you'll never know until you try to do it yourself. The problem we face here in Vernon is, like always, we have the policies on our side, we have the issues on our side, but they have the name recognition and they have the money. And that's why I ask everybody, please go to my website, which is schoolnikforvernon.com, and please consider giving to my campaign, because there's just a few more weeks left, and every little bit that comes in can help make sure that we have the resources we need to defeat Dan. Because, as I mentioned, people see him at the fireworks, people see him doing things around town, and they don't necessarily put two together that just because you see him doesn't mean he's doing a good job in both of his positions. But I think, like a lot of politicians out there, he relies on people not paying close enough attention to really get into the nitty gritty of things. He looks at how things are going. And, people, again, they see him smiling at a corner, waving to them in the morning, and think that's all you need. But I think anybody who's been involved in this process and anybody who wants to get involved in this process knows or needs to know that you have to put in the effort and you have to have the knowledge and the ability to do it. And I think that's something I have, and I think that's something that could really help as we look to the future of Vernon.
Yes, most certainly. And I do love that you again stepped up and that you are challenging this individual, Daniel Champagne, who's the mayor of Mount Vernon, as well as a state senator there in Connecticut, and happens to be a Trump supporter as well. Because the reality is, I'm guessing that the people of Vernon, as you mentioned, being purple, that there's a mixture of needs there, and they're not necessarily met by having a hard red Republican representative.
Yeah, one of the most disturbing things to me, at least, was after what happened on January 6th. The town Democrats tried to get together with the town Republicans and put out a joint statement and say, no matter what our differences are and what our political beliefs are, what we saw on January 6th is just not acceptable and can't happen. And we couldn't get it done. It started out, but there are too many members of the town Republicans who wouldn't sign on because they didn't want to say publicly that they thought it was bad. And like I mentioned earlier, I have a history of bipartisanship, and I have a lot of friends, or at least I did in the past, who were Republicans. And I know there's a lot of what I'd call Republican classic out there who looks at what happened on January 6th and just was super disturbed by it. And I need those people to stand up here in Vernon, because I don't look at them as the enemy. I look at them as a loyal opposition, and I would like them to look at me the same way, and that we fight for what's right for our town, our state, and our country.
Yes, absolutely. That bipartisanship and uplifting people. I can definitely attest the fact that I've seen you in your professional life, definitely with the bipartisanship, as we worked at the same major law firm together in Washington, D.C. And we often helped out our Republican comrades in terms of doing work, uplifting people and representing voices. And that's such an important thing, as I know you're uplifting and representing voices in Vernon there. And so I'd love to hear more, just so that people can get to know you a little bit more. You want to tell us a little bit about what you do for fun, what you got going on in your own life?
Well, we mentioned this quickly before we started recording today. I'm getting married in April. So when I'm knocking doors here in town, I tell people that the future of Vernon is my future. I want to raise my family here. I want to have kids here. So it means the world to me. I'm also a podcaster too. So if anybody likes pop culture, you can please listen to my podcast, which is Kickball Friends. But mostly I spend my time working on issues here in town. A lot of my friends are all involved too. My best friend, Kevin Brown, lives a mile away. I've known him for 21 years, and he's on the Board of Education. He's fighting for what's right here in town. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better than fighting for what you believe in with your best friend. It's one of the most special things I've ever done.
That is fantastic. And I'm very, very excited to see you move forward and make this fight and try to work as you continue to lead there in your town of Vernon, Connecticut. And I'm sure the people there very much appreciate your contributions. And I am excited to continue to see you move toward your mayoral race and hopefully your win. So if you can tell the viewers one last time where they can find out more information about you and how to support your campaign for mayor of Vernon, Connecticut.
Please go to schoolnikforvernon.com. You'll find a link to donate there. Every little bit helps. We're making strides. We're getting a lot of donations in recent days, but we needed a little more to get us over the edge, to get some mailers out there and let the people know. When people talk to me, they see things my way, but I can only talk to so many people in town. So those mailers and those phone calls and those volunteers will mean the world to me. And with your help, I think I can achieve it. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the show and joining us. Jesse Schoolnik, candidate for mayor, Vernon, Connecticut. Take care, Jesse.
You too.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.